How old are you? What city are you watching from right now? Is it morning where you sit? Or is it already dark outside your window? Tell me in the comments before we begin. And if you crave stories of history that cut like knives, stories that smell of smoke and blood and memory, subscribe right now. February 21st, 1860. Rutherford County, Tennessee. Mardi Gras night. The cold is sharp. The sky is low. The bonfires of celebration glow in the distance. Laughter spilling across fields that had once been rivers of corn. The white folks drink. The fiddles scrape. The drums thump in rhythm with boots on porches. Behind the masks, their faces glisten with sweat and sugar. But inside the kitchen of the Rutledge plantation, the smoke is different. It's thicker, hotter, charged. Not the smoke of celebration, the smoke of reckoning. Solomon. That was his name. 26 years old, body carved from labor, eyes that had seen too much silence. Solomon, the man they called boy, property, shadow. He was not a shadow, he was a storm. He stands before the great black cauldron, oak fire licking at its belly. The oil inside bubbles low and slow. To them it is food, to him it is fate. Colonel James Rutledge owns the land, the fields, the house, the people. At least he thinks he does. His brother William drinks early and drinks late, the sour smell always in his beard. Cousin Henry Vaughan fancies himself clever, a man of books, but he sneers when Solomon walks past. Overseer Thomas Pike carries a whip even when he eats, curling it around his palm as if the sound of cracking leather is music. And then there is Samuel, the youngest, 20, spoiled, cruel without effort. 5 men, 5 masters, 5 names repeated like drum beats in Solomon's skull. He remembers their habits like a priest remembers prayers. Colonel James tapping his cane against the hearth whenever food is late. William spitting his whiskey into the stew to season it. Henry Vaughan flicking cigar ash onto the floor, daring Solomon to clean it with his bare hands. Thomas Pike chewing tobacco, letting the juice fall where Solomon kneels. Samuel laughing at nothing, because cruelty itself is his joke. They think the kitchen is theirs. They think Solomon is theirs. But the kitchen is where Solomon has lived his whole life. The knives, the ladles, the pots, these are his companions. The heat is his teacher. The fire has whispered to him since childhood. Whispered of patience, whispered of timing. The whip cracked, but the fire stayed. He was born on this soil. His mother Sarah gave him his name before they tore her away. She told him once, "You are Solomon for wisdom. Wisdom will be your weapon." He was only 7 when they sold her south. He never saw her again. He remembers the sound of her voice. He remembers her calloused hand on his cheek. He remembers. He always remembers. His sister Dinah, older by 2 years, sang to him when the nights froze. They dragged her away at 14. Her screams split the trees. Her song ended in chains. His brother Caleb, beaten for stealing bread that was his by right. The overseer Pike laid lash after lash until the boy didn't move, until his back was ribbons, until his chest stopped rising. Solomon buried him under cedar roots, alone, with his hands, with dirt under his nails and rage inside his ribs. Dinah, Caleb, Sarah. He remembers their names. Names are never lost. Names are carved into bone. And every day after, Solomon cooked. He chopped onions until tears blinded him. He salted pork until his skin burned with salt. He stirred gumbo until his arm shook. He listened to the laughter in the dining room, laughter fat on his labor. He cleaned plates licked by men who called him less than human. He did not cry. He just waited. Morning on the plantation begins with cold mist and barking hounds. Solomon wakes in the slave quarters, ribs aching from thin straw, the air sharp with smoke and unwashed clothes. He hears the chains of others shifting, the coughs of children, the prayers whispered low. He does not pray, he listens. The kitchen is his cage but also his weapon, blackened pots stacked like cannonballs, knives with handles worn smooth from his grip, ladles heavy as iron. Every tool has another use, every meal another meaning. When Colonel James enters, Solomon stands still. When William shoves him, Solomon does not stumble. When Henry calls him shadow, Solomon does not reply. When Pike spits, Solomon does not flinch. When Samuel laughs, Solomon does not join. He remembers. He repeats their names in silence. James, William, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. He cooks for them, but inside, he seasons his memory with their cruelty. And Mardi Gras approaches. The white folks talk of parades, of masks, of feasts. For Solomon, it means longer hours, hotter fires, more meat to roast. But this Mardi Gras is different. The air feels heavier. The oil bubbles louder, the fire glows brighter. The silence inside him stirs. This is the setup. This is the beginning. This is the night when silence will shatter. Before we continue, drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time it is where you sit. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The past never leaves. It lingers like smoke in the rafters, like blood under fingernails. For Solomon, the past is not memory, it is marrow. Before he became the cook, before the pots and knives claimed his hands, Solomon was a child in the fields. The sun blistered his neck, the soil packed beneath his nails. His mother Sarah worked beside him. She bent low over cotton rows, whispering hymns between breaths. Her voice was the first sound he ever loved. Her silence, when they sold her away, was the first death he ever knew. He was 7. He remembers the wagon wheels grinding against gravel. He remembers Sarah's hands bound, her face streaked with dust and tears. He remembers reaching for her, his arm caught by the overseer Pike. He remembers her voice calling his name, Solomon, Solomon, until the wheels took her away. He did not cry, he just remembered. Dinah sang at night to calm him, Dinah with her braids shining, her voice sweet as river water. She sang of freedom she had never seen, of skies she had never walked under. They came for her when she was 14, sold south to New Orleans. Her screams ripped through the night. Solomon held his hands over his ears, but the sound sank into him like iron into water. He never saw her again. He did not cry. He just remembered. Caleb was reckless, hungry. One night he stole bread from the kitchen. Overseer Pike caught him. They tied Caleb to the whipping post at dawn. Solomon was forced to watch. Lash after lash split his brother's back. Blood sprayed against the dust. Pike laughed with every crack. "Steal again, boy," he said. Caleb gasped. "I only wanted to live." By the 50th stroke, Caleb no longer moved. By the 60th, he no longer breathed. Solomon dug his brother's grave with his own hands. No coffin, no prayer, just dirt covering flesh. He whispered Caleb's name 3 times into the earth. He swore he would never forget. He did not cry, he just remembered. The plantation had many slaves. Men with bent backs, women with hollow eyes, children who grew up too fast. They whispered to each other at night, trading scraps of hope like contraband. But hope was fragile. The whip crushed it, the chain strangled it. Solomon carried their stories in silence, his heart a ledger of pain. Colonel James Rutledge, the master, claimed to be a man of order. He carried a cane, silver-tipped, tapping it against the floor when impatient. He would sit at the head of the long table, demanding silence before meals. But in the kitchen, he demanded more than silence. He demanded obedience. When a plate was late, he struck with the cane. When the bread was burnt, he had the cook flogged. When Solomon's hands trembled, James sneered, "Steady, boy, or I'll steady them for you." William, his brother, was worse in another way. Always drunk, always shouting. He once poured boiling coffee over a young girl's arm because she spilled sugar. He once beat a man with a chair because his whiskey glass chipped. His laugh was thick and ugly. The laugh of a man who thinks pain is music. Henry Vaughan pretended refinement. He quoted books, spoke of philosophy, but behind his words was rot. He mocked the slaves for ignorance, though he himself taught them nothing. He delighted in using words as whips, cutting deeper than leather. He once forced Solomon to recite scripture, then beat him for mispronouncing. "Wisdom is wasted on shadows," Henry said, and flicked ash into Solomon's stew. Thomas Pike, the overseer, was cruelty made flesh, tall, gaunt, with a jaw like an axe blade. His whip was his companion, his voice a snarl. He spat tobacco into the dirt, into food, into faces. He walked with a swagger born of unchecked power. He killed Caleb. He broke men's ribs for working too slow. He once forced Solomon to kneel for an hour with bricks in each hand. "Strengthen your arms, boy," he laughed. And Samuel, young Samuel, 20 years old, a boy in years but already rotten, he mocked the slaves with childish cruelty. He burned insects with magnifying glass, then turned the same trick on Solomon's hand. He threw scraps at Solomon's feet like feeding a dog. He demanded stories and songs, then laughed at every word. He was the cruelest because he thought it was play. Solomon absorbed it all. He cooked their meals, watched their rituals, listened to their voices. Every insult, every lash, every spit, he stored inside him like kindling. He stirred stews with one hand and stirred rage with the other. And always in the silence, he repeated the names: Sarah, Dinah, Caleb, James, William, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. a litany of love and hate, of memory and vengeance. The Mardi Gras feasts became rituals of humiliation. While the whites wore masks and danced, the slaves labored double. Solomon cooked for hours, roasting pigs, boiling stews, frying fish. He smelled the meat, rich and heavy, while the slaves ate scraps. He heard laughter from the great house while the quarters fell silent with hunger. He watched plates of food wasted, dogs eating better than children. Every year, Mardi Gras meant more waste, more laughter, more cruelty. And every year, Solomon's silence grew heavier. He began to see the tools differently. The knife was not just for chopping onions, it was for cutting throats. The ladle was not just for soup, it was for striking skulls. The cauldron of oil was not just for frying catfish, it was for fire, for vengeance, for memory. He waited, patient, silent. The fire inside him never cooled, not because he sought glory, not because he craved blood, but because memory demanded it, because silence could not last forever, because names must be answered. Sarah, Dinah, Caleb, James, William, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. One list of the lost, one list of the guilty. The past boiled inside him like oil over flame. It hissed, it spat, it burned, and Solomon never forgot. It begins with bread, not the lash, not the chain, not the grave. It begins with bread, a loaf of cornbread, pulled from the oven too dry. Solomon sets it on the table. Samuel, young Samuel, 20 and cruel, picks it up, frowns, and hurls it back. The loaf strikes Solomon's cheek, breaking into crumbs, hot and sharp. The boy laughs, a laugh that echoes against the kitchen walls like a whip crack. Too dry, boy. Can't you even bake? The others laugh with him. James taps his cane. William slaps his thigh. Henry shakes his head in mock disappointment. Pike spits tobacco juice into the fire. The oil hisses. The smell of smoke and spit mingles in the air. Solomon stands still. He does not answer. He does not flinch. He does not cry. He just remembers. The crumbs sting his cheek, but it is not pain that changes him. It is the laughter same laughter he heard when Caleb was whipped. The same laughter that rang when Dinah was dragged away. The same laughter that filled the air when Sarah's hands were bound. It is laughter that breaks him. That night, Solomon cannot sleep. He lies on the straw mat in the slave quarters, staring at the roof beams. The wind whistles through the cracks. Children whimper in their sleep. A man coughs until dawn. Solomon hears it all, but inside he hears only the laughter. He thinks of Dinah's song, cut short by chains. He thinks of Caleb's voice, gasping for breath under Pike's lash. He thinks of Sarah's hands, reaching as the wagon carried her away. He thinks of the loaf of bread striking his cheek. He sees it clearly now. Tools, weapons, fire. Silence turned to storm. The knife, sharp enough to slice pork, sharp enough to cut deeper. The ladle, heavy enough to scoop stew, heavy enough to crush bone. The cauldron, wide enough to fry fish, wide enough to drown men. They called them tools, but they were not tools. They were truth. The kitchen is not their place. It is his place. The fire does not belong to them. It belongs to him. He sharpens the knife in the dark, scraping steel against stone. Sparks jump like fireflies. He tests the blade on his palm. It cuts air itself. He hides it beneath a sack of cornmeal. He stirs oil into the great pot, though no fish wait to be fried. He adds wood to the fire, feeding it, coaxing it, building it. The flames answer him. They lick higher, they hiss louder. They know what is coming. He prepares ladles, setting them near the cauldron. Not for soup, for striking. He knows their weight. He knows their swing. He has trained for years without knowing it. Every stir was a rehearsal. Every meal was practice. The breaking point is not rage. It is clarity. He does not shake. He does not tremble. He feels calm, steady as stone. His silence is no longer submission. It is focus. He knows what night it will happen. Mardi Gras, the night of masks and feasts. The night when the masters grow drunk and careless. The night when the kitchen burns hottest, smells strongest, laughter loudest. The night when memory will answer cruelty. He whispers their names into the fire. James, William, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. He whispers the names of the lost. Sarah, Dinah, Caleb. The flames crackle. As if they hear, he does not pray. He does not beg. He does not cry. He just prepares. Mardi Gras dawn breaks with frost on the ground and smoke in the air. The fields glisten under pale sunlight. The quarters stir with groans, coughs, the shuffle of feet. But in the great house, the laughter begins early. Guests arrive, masks bright, voices loud, bottles uncork. Music rises. Solomon works in the kitchen, his hands steady, his breath even. He chops onions, though tears blur his sight. He salts pork, though his skin burns with salt. He stirs stew, though his arms shake with rage. To the masters he looks the same, silent, submissive, shadow. But inside, the silence coils tighter. Inside, the fire hisses. Inside, the oil bubbles. Every sound sharpens his focus. The cane tapping on wood, the glass shattering on stone, the laughter swelling from the dining room. Every sound feeds the storm. And when Samuel enters, grinning beneath a mask of feathers, Solomon knows the time has come. The oil bubbles loud. The knife glints sharp. The ladle weights heavy. He has reached the breaking point. There is no turning back. Not because of bread, not because of laughter, but because silence cannot hold forever. Because memory demands voice. Because names demand blood. Sarah, Dinah, Caleb, James, William, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. One list of the lost, one list of the guilty. And tonight, the lists will balance. The feast begins in laughter. It will end in screams. The dining hall of the Pike plantation glows with candlelight. Bottles spill, glasses clink, masks shimmer with feathers, beads, and gold. The masters sit in a row, 5 kings of cruelty at the head of their table, their voices booming above the fiddles and drums. James Pike at the center, his cane resting against his chair, tapping like a gavel. William at his right, belly stretched against the tablecloth, guffawing between mouthfuls of meat. Henry at his left, eyes sharp, always watching. Further down, Thomas licks grease from his fingers, drunk already, careless. At the far edge, young Samuel laughs loudest, mask tilted, pride brighter than wine. Behind them, Solomon moves, silent, steady. He pours wine into cups. He carves meat. He brings bread to the table. He bows when eyes turn. He vanishes when laughter rises. A shadow among masks. But tonight, the shadow sharpens. Tonight, silence has teeth. The oil. The cauldron bubbles in the kitchen, hotter than any stew. Thick oil churns like molten gold. It hisses when stirred. Solomon has stoked the fire high, higher than needed. Flames lick the black iron, hungry. He waits for the first moment, the first slip in their guard. He waits for Samuel. Samuel's end. Samuel enters the kitchen, flushed with wine, mask dangling from his face. He sways, smiling, swagger in every step. More pork, boy, he slurs. Faster, or I'll have your hide for the dogs. Solomon turns slowly. His hands lift the ladle. Steam rises, carrying the smell of burning oil. Samuel doesn't see the blade of heat. He only sees a servant, a shadow, until the ladle swings. The oil arcs through the air like liquid fire. It strikes Samuel's face, clinging, hissing, eating. He screams, a sound sharp enough to crack the walls. His hands claw at his skin, but the oil burns through flesh, through eyelids, through lips. The mask falls, smoking, curling in flames. Samuel stumbles, crashes into the table. Bottles shatter. Wine spreads like blood. Guests rise in confusion, and Solomon lifts the ladle again. This time, he brings it down on Samuel's skull. The iron cracks bone. Samuel collapses. His screams stop. His face is nothing but ruin, melted and broken. The first has fallen. The laughter dies in the hall. The knife. James Pike rises, cane in hand, eyes blazing. "Seize him!" he roars. His voice carries command, but his body does not move fast enough. Solomon is already at the table. His hand closes around the carving knife. Long, sharp silver flashing in candlelight. He does not hesitate. William lunges first, clumsy, heavy with wine. Solomon turns the knife upward, driving it deep into William's throat. The blade slides clean. Blood sprays across the tablecloth, staining white into crimson. William gurgles, choking on his own feast. He falls backward, chair splintering beneath him. The guests scream. Masks drop, feet pound toward the door, but the masters are trapped. Solomon is not after them. Not yet. He pulls the knife free, his hand steady, his eyes burning. 2 down. The cane. James grips his cane tight. He raises it, charging at Solomon, but the years weigh heavy. His strike is slow, his aim weak. Solomon catches the cane in both hands. The wood groans, then snaps in half. Before James can react, Solomon drives the broken end into his chest. Once, twice, again, each thrust deeper, each breath shorter. James staggers, eyes wide, blood filling his mouth. The master who silenced so many voices now chokes on his own. His cane, once a symbol of command, now a spear through his ribs. James falls across the table, face down in his feast. His blood mingles with wine. His cane juts from his chest like a marker. 3 down. The pot. Henry runs. He does not fight. He runs toward the door, shouting for guns, for dogs, for men. But the kitchen waits for him. The cauldron waits. Solomon follows, calm, steady. He grips the pot's handle with both hands. Oil sloshes, bubbling like a voice. He lifts, he carries, he pours. The boiling flood cascades over Henry's back. It clings, it devours. His clothes ignite, his flesh smokes. He collapses, writhing, shrieking, clawing at the floor. The fire eats him alive. The house smells of burning meat. 4 down. The fire. Only Thomas remains. Drunk, stumbling, he grabs a bottle, hurls it at Solomon. It misses, shattering against the wall. He grabs a chair, swings it wildly. Solomon does not dodge. He moves forward, into the blow. The chair crashes against his shoulder, splintering. Pain flashes, but he does not stop. He seizes Thomas by the throat. He drags him into the kitchen. He throws him against the hearth. Flames leap, catching Thomas's clothes, his hair, his mask. He screams, flailing, burning. Solomon presses him into the fire with both hands. He holds him there, face first, until the screams become sparks, until the body is still, until the smell of ash fills the room. 5 down. Silence after the storm. The hall is empty now. Guests fled into the night, masks trampled in the dirt. The great table lies overturned, food and blood and glass strewn across the floor. In the center stands Solomon, knife dripping, hands scorched, face calm. Around him lie the 5. Samuel, melted. William, bled. James, pierced. Henry, burned. Thomas, turned to ash. The house groans in silence. The fire whispers. The storm has passed, but this is not the end. It is only the reckoning. The night breathes heavy after the storm. The air tastes of iron, of smoke, of fear. The Pike plantation no longer roars with music. It lies silent, stunned, its Mardi Gras swallowed in fire and blood. The other slaves emerge from the quarters, drawn by the screams that shook the rafters. They gather at the edge of the hall, eyes wide, hands trembling. They see the wreckage, masks torn, wine spilled, the 5 bodies broken. They see Solomon standing in the center, his hands scorched, his chest rising slow. He does not speak. He does not need to. The silence tells everything. The silence is the sermon. For years they bowed their heads. For years they swallowed pain, buried names, buried children, buried dignity. Tonight, one man tore the mask away. Tonight, one man became the storm they had all dreamed of, but never dared to breathe aloud. Some weep, not from sorrow, but from release. Some clasp their hands to their mouths, afraid of what comes next. Some whisper his name over and over. Solomon, Solomon, Solomon. The house creaks. Flames crawl higher. The oil still sizzles in the cauldron, black and bubbling, as if hungry for more. The bodies hiss as fat meets fire. The smell is unbearable, unforgettable. In the distance, dogs bark. Lanterns swing. Riders thunder down the road, summoned by fleeing guests. White men with guns, white men with fury. Solomon knows what waits outside. He knows the dogs will not spare him. He knows the rifles will not miss. He does not run. He kneels by the cauldron. He dips the knife into the oil, lets it hiss, lets it drink. He places it beside him. He straightens his back. His chest rises once more. When the doors burst open, when guns point, when voices scream, "Down! Down!" He does not fall to his knees. He does not beg. He stares, silent, eyes like embers. The bullets strike. The body jerks. The blood spills. He does not cry. He just falls, as if laying himself into the fire. And with him, something else falls. Not just a man, a chain. The next morning, the plantation smolders. The masters are ash. The fields are quiet. The slaves whisper in the corners, voices low, voices trembling. But the name travels faster than fire. By noon, It spreads to neighboring plantations, by dusk across counties, by dawn across states, a name carried like a ghost, like a drumbeat. Solomon of Tennessee, the one who cooked 5 masters in their own feast. Some tell it with horror, some tell it with awe, some refuse to believe it at all. But the story grows. It does not shrink. They call it madness, they call it evil. But the truth is simpler. It was memory. It was silence given teeth. It was one man's breaking point turned into history's wound. The survivors, those who fled, swear they saw his face glowing in the fire. They say he did not scream even when the bullets struck. They say his eyes burned brighter than the flames. Years later, freed men still whisper his name. Mothers tell their children by the fire. Solomon, who turned the masters into their own meat. Solomon, who poured silence into the cauldron and made it raw. The white men bury it in their ledgers. They write of a disturbance, a Negro uprising, a tragedy on Mardi Gras night. But the true words live in mouths, not on paper. They live in memory, passed hand to hand like hidden fire. The Pike plantation never recovers. Its fields grow weeds. Its house crumbles. The land bears scars that no plow can hide. And every Mardi Gras night, the story is told again. Of masks, of fire, of oil, of 5 who feasted and burned, of one who rose and fell, not because he wanted freedom, but because he could no longer live in chains, not because he loved death, but because memory demanded blood. One for every lash, one for every scar, one for every name buried without a grave. Solomon, Solomon, Solomon. If this story still burns in your chest, it is because fire remembers what silence tries to bury. Subscribe and share with those who refuse to forget.